Our third album review comes from the Grumpy Tree Paradigm Shift, who wants me to review Ænima by Tool. I'm sorry that this took so long, but I needed to check with my employer if a Tool review would breach my exclusivity agreement that I had to sign during onboarding. But we got it all figured out, so here we go. Before we can get into the track-by-track review of the album, we need to talk about how I feel about the vocals on this album. I really don't like how most of the vocals sit under the mix extremely fuzzy, and even though I know that's the point, for it to be abrasive and stuff, it really detracts from the music for me, especially with how much I like the harsher vocals that are clearer and sit on the mix better on some tracks. I didn't want the review to just evolve into me nitpicking this throughout the whole album because there is a lot here outside of the vocals that I do like, but unless I mention the vocals clearly working for me on a track, it's safe to assume that they do not. I really like how big this track gets about 3 minutes in, and the build-up is satisfying as hell. The harsher vocals on the chorus here really make this song super fun to listen to as well. The song really sets me up for this album to be a slow burn, which is something I appreciate and tend to expect from something more industrial like this, especially when it's held in such high regard by music critics and fans alike. From the second listen onwards, I couldn't help but vibe with the slow burner percussion that starts off this track to a point where, as I'm writing this review, I'm fucking head bobbing. I like the super quiet guitars that come in to join the percussion, bringing me almost to a full dance. Am I supposed to dance to Tool? Well, beyond the intro, this is one of the few tracks where I absolutely love everything done with the production, including the vocals. This track, again, starts small, but it grows fucking huge. This track gets a lot of compliments that I've given to other tracks so far. The instrumentation on this track is pristine, and this is the biggest payoff to a slow burn so far with how huge it gets. The vocals do detract a lot here for me, though. Useful Idiot is kinda just there, and I can't decide whether to group it with H or 46 and 2. Normally, the effects used on the guitars here would detract from the song for me with all the fuzz and distortion, but it really works on this track. I like the progression we get on the same motif from the guitars over and over, building up and up. I don't know how to feel while listening to this track, but I like that it exists. The piano is good and the voice message is interesting and doesn't detract from the album. Ironically, it would be the track titled Hooker with a Penis that would be the most radio-friendly track from the album due to the length and the non-abrasiveness, despite being one that could never be played on the radio due to how much it says "fuck you, buddy." I like the harsh bass and the slight relief of tension during the chorus while still remaining harsh as hell overall. I like the solo at the end too, although it does get a bit fuzzy. I don't mind the vocals here as much, probably because it's a shorter track, or even more likely because the vocals evolve with the instrumentation a lot better here than elsewhere. I love the minute-long lead-in with the organ synths that repeat earlier motifs and foreshadow the next track, Jimmy, very seamlessly. The vocals almost work here because even if they are sitting very low in the mix, a lot of the instrumentation does too, and they grow out of sitting low when the instrumentation does. The drums are very tight on the whole album, but I think this is the standard drums at their best, not counting the weird hand or pitched percussion that we get later. The track almost overstays its welcome, but thankfully changes motif just in time for me. This is another noise industrial interlude like Useful Idiot, but I actually remember this one exists without looking at the track list, and it gets some talking over it, which makes this fun. It's implied that it's Nazi and Satanist, but it's actually just a recipe for cookies. I like the triplet drums too. This feels like two songs. For the first half, I really like the instrumentation here and the non-melodic hook when the title Push It is said percussively. I also really enjoy everything about the sludgy pre-chorus and the power chord-filled chorus and post-chorus. It kinda dies off halfway and loses me for a little bit, but then you come back in with some fun hand percussion with well-done vocals low in the mix, and some fuzzy sludge power chord with Eastern feel shenanigans that make this track super fucking fun and big at the end. The I Must Persuade You Another Way section is probably my favorite song segment on the whole album so far, or close second to the intro on Eulogy. I feel like this interlude has more going on than Useful Idiot, but manages to be more forgettable and more just here nonetheless. This has some of the cleanest bass and guitars on the whole album. It starts out like a grunge shanty in composition. Pirate industrial? Maybe. Probably, I would like to think. This track is super fun and sits separate in genre from the rest of the album, jumping between grunge, classic rock, classic metal, neo-psychedelic, and even new wave or pop feels. I feel like this best shows the full arsenal that Tool has in songwriting, experimentation, payoffs, instrumentation, vocals, production, and probably 10 other things I'm forgetting to mention right now. The only thing it doesn't do the best at is being a slow burner, but 7 slow burners, 1 push it, 5 interludes, and 10 seconds short of 53 minutes in, they get in and get shit done is very welcome. The song never loses my intention, and the vocals always work. If it isn't clear, this track is my favorite by quite a bit, and maybe my favorite track I have reviewed so far on these album reviews. This is my favorite purely industrial interlude on the album. It really doesn't do too much, but it's not trying too hard to be abrasive like I felt Useful Idiot and Cicero Some Ability were trying to do. This is the slowest burner of them all, but it's kinda worth it. The first half vocally working for me less than any other track on the album, and the War on Drugs clips probably not landing as well in 2018 as 1996 didn't really help much. The first half of this track merges neo-psych with industrial instrumentation very well, with some clean arpeggios that you could expect from a grunge outfit that got radio play or an indie outfit that still gets radio play. It stops in the middle of the track for some fun pitched percussion, but the weird whispering paired with it doesn't really land too well for me. The Prying Opened My Third Eye section really works for me though, and all the solos between those vocals remind me of some of the prog rock solos I really love. This track is 1.5 times longer than any other track on the album, and is 1.5 times everything I like and dislike about the album. So it really ends up sitting in the middle for me, for the first half with the second half being a true highlight of the album. After my first listen to Ænima, I concluded two things. Firstly, this album isn't meant for me. Industrial music is something that even though I love its influences and the genres that it has influenced, I'm never going to be in love with the genre itself. Secondly, I am not going to be in love with Tool after reviewing this album. Both of these really stayed true. The departures from industrial on this album are what I ended up loving most of all, and I can't really say that I'm a Tool fan, but having said that, reviewing this album, sticking through the first listen where I didn't get it at all, the second one where I was starting to but not quite there yet, and the 8 after that, I respect this genre and I gained a respect and appreciation for Tool that I really didn't think I would end up having after the first listen. I don't see myself revisiting this album in full very often, but I give it a high 6, low 7 out of 10. My favorite tracks are Ænima, Push It, Eulogy, Intermission Jimmy, and the last half of Third Eye if I'm allowed to just pick half of a song. And my least favorite are probably the interludes, Useful Idiot and Cicero Some Ability, if I didn't telegraph that well enough already. Thank you Paradigm Shift for suggesting this album, and thank you for subscribing.